What's up, my Medieval 2 fans? Hope you're all doing well. I'm Wolflef, and today we're doing another faction ranking video, or like a tier list video. This time it's based off of power. So I guess to explain that, it's the power of the faction when you are playing it. So how powerful are they compared to other factions? Like some factions are less powerful when the AI control them. Some factions are more powerful when the AI control them than when you control them, which is rare. But auto expansion exists. But that being said, let's just dive right into it. We're gonna go in alphabetical order. Of course, there's some non-playable factions on this list. It's just on Tiermaker. It's just one of the ones that they provide or someone else made. This is I think it's Dark Lord of Mordor or whatever. It's a non-playable faction. And thankfully they don't have Reunited Kingdom in here, so I don't have to add another thing to non-playable. All right, let's go alphabetically. Actually, no, we'll go like the last one. We'll go by culture groups. So we'll be going by the, I guess, middlemen? I think, no, the Northmen, because Dorwinian's also in this group. All right. Vale of Anduin is S tier. No, I'm kidding. They're dog shit. They're probably one of the weakest factions when you control them, because you are going to get steamrolled at the start. I mean, every faction is winnable, but it's a lot longer of a campaign to actually make these guys work. And they're a weak faction. So if you are new to the game, they've not been updated in a while, I don't think. When they sorely need an update. I mean, these guys are just sandwiched between the worst possible situation. When Gundabad, which we'll get to in a moment, didn't exist, they used to be a lot stronger than they are now. But the issue is the Gundabad's here, and they're absolutely going to bum rape you on turn like 5. Because they're going to take Framsburg and they're going to destroy you. And then, of course, the Orcs of the Misty Mountains, or I think they're Goblins of Moria now. When it was just them fighting you, it was in Dol Guldur, it was fine. But now that now you also have a third faction that's occasionally fighting you, it's just hard, very hard to deal with. Which brings us to, which is why they're in the F tier. They're, I think, in my opinion, the weakest faction in the game, especially when you play them. But moving on to the next Northman faction, here is Dale. Dale is an A tier faction. They have very strong infantry. Their cavalry is decent, and their archers are insane. The best in the region in archers, in my opinion. But well, you will have better archers than all your foes. I can't say that because the elves exist, and the elves are better than everyone in archers and just about everything. But yeah, you're pretty strong, especially in your region. Fighting off Dol Guldur is not too difficult. And going down into Rune, objectively, you're just more powerful, and you have more time to kind of get down there and build up your economy. Rune's going to obviously steamroll Dorwinian after a little while, but still, it's highly likely that this is not, it's not a super hard campaign, which brings into balance questions, but we're not going to get into that, since, the Northmen really shouldn't be all that powerful. But yeah, you're pretty much going to be able to, obviously, you don't want to auto-resolve at all with these guys, but you're pretty much going to be able to beat everyone in the battlefield just because you have better archers, and you're facing Dol Guldur, who have very weak armor, or very lackluster armor. So yeah, that's why Dale's in the A tier. Moving on to Dorwinian. Dorwinian is, in my opinion, see, it depends on the way you go, because if you go men, they're a little weak. They're actually kind of stronger than if you go elves, because if you go elves, then the issue you run into is that you don't have enough money to buy anything. But I'd say they're actually a D tier faction. I was originally going to go C in actually my mock tier list when I wasn't recording, just sort of trying to figure out where everything would stack up, because I do those. Put them in the C tier. But thinking about it now more, you have a very strong enemy to your east in Rune, although you can try to ally with them. I don't think it'll work, but you can try. You do have powerful allies, at least, or at least powerful factions that probably would ally with you. Like, I think you're allied to the Woodland Realm from the start, because you have like a whole history with them in The Hobbit. Because that's where they get their wine in The Hobbit. And I know you're allied to Dale, so I'm not sure if you have powerful allies, and you can probably get one with Erebor as well, so just thinking about it. But also, Rune has strong units, and they're going to get a lot of them, especially with the turn 1 auto expansion, just gives them a whole empire. They're going to be on your doorstep in like 4 turns, maybe. And then obviously Dol Guldur is coming from the west. So it's a difficult campaign. You're not as screwed as the Anduin is, because the Anduin is legitimately from the start, just you're dead. You're gone. There's no way. You're surrounded by enemies and you have very little rebel expansion, which means you're constantly going to be fighting stronger armies. So, but you are very much at risk from the start. The best way to probably play the campaign is just to try to march your ass, try to hold the line at Coruscant, and then just march west a little bit with your armies to get a little more money, and then finally finish off Rune. If you can do that. It is a difficult campaign, but it's not overly insanely hard. Now the final Northman faction that we have. Excuse me. Just 8. Is the Rohirrim. Rohirrim, when you play them, are S tier. I don't care what anyone says. Cavalry is king in Medieval 2, and the Rohirrim have the best cavalry. One of the few nations with a bodyguard that is cavalry. I think you and Dol Amroth as well. And Khand? Yeah, Khand also has it. Those 3 all have cavalry bodyguards. You're just going to win every fight on the battle map. So, yeah. And that's all our Northman factions. Again, Rohan is S. I shouldn't have to explain this too much. If anyone in the comment is like, oh, well, Rohan, it's so difficult because Isengard has really good anti-cavalry units. So, Byzantium in base Medieval 2 has really good anti-cavalry units. And anti-cavalry cavalry. And you can still rape them as the Seljuks. Or as the Turks, rather. It's not hard. Cavalry is king in Medieval 2. And also you can just march your way into Isengard, and by like turn 10 or 15, just destroy them, and then you have an easy game. Yeah. So that's why it's really not that difficult. Really powerful faction. I think they're well designed though, because I do think that Theoden being locked away does hinder you a little bit, but not that much. Alright. What else? Other factions I think we do go from men to men. So let's go to the middlemen now. We're gonna go with Breland the Shire. Insanely, I know you wouldn't think this from where I put them in my design ranking, but that was a little less standardized, and I think there was less of a criteria. But you have some insane units that you can get that aren't even part of your faction, and plus your base units that you can get in your faction, whether or not you choose to go mercenaries or I think it's Dunedain is the other faction, or the other choice. You still have some solid units. Plus overall, you're kind of protected by the Dunedain, so you can just kind of go into Cardolin and take what you need, really. Just take what settlements you can find. It's not too difficult of a campaign. Overall, you're pretty safe. Unless, of course, the Heirloom turns on you, then you're kind of getting it fucked. But, you know, you're not doing too bad. All right. Who's Middlemen faction? There we go. Dunland is a B tier faction. I recently played a little bit of Dunland. I'm thinking about maybe making that a little edited series that I'll show you how my game went, because I realized I ranked them kind of low for design, which I apologize for, because I mean, if we go back to that design tier list, I'd probably move them up to like B or B now, because they're a fun faction. I like them a lot. But yeah, I do like the uniting the clans, but I think that at this point, guys, can we stop doing the uniting the clans, or like proving your strength? It was cool when we did it with Rune and Harad, but at this point, when every single faction that you decided could be a clan to unite has the like uniting the clans, getting better units because you conquered this thing scripts, I think it's a little boring. But again, this is a design tier list. Their units are B, and if you play it right, which you'll see if I ever do upload that little video, little edited video, I did not play them right at all. I kind of played them wrong, but I still kind of, they're powerful enough to the point where I didn't absolutely die. It's still an ongoing campaign, so we'll see how that goes. But they're pretty powerful. You have decently powerful enemies. It's kind of difficult to get Tharbad, but you don't need Tharbad. you could just go after the Enedwaith and Rohan, and eventually Isengard will join in. You can get an alliance with Moria relatively easy, and they're unlikely to backstab you because they're just dealing with so much shit. So yeah, that's where I'm putting Dunland. And then Enedwaith. Have not played an Enedwaith campaign in a while, but from what I remember, they had some insane javelins, man. And I mean, Jesus Christ, those things were just OP. Now I've not fully united. I don't think I've fully played a campaign where I united the clans in version 5, but I mean their unit roster is the best among the Wildmen. That being 1, 2, and 3. They have the best unit roster. They have a decent starting position as well. Being surrounded by rebel settlements isn't that bad. And you actually can manage to get an alliance with Dunland, and it won't be that hard. Plus, you start off true neutral, which is definitely going to benefit you for trading or getting alliances with, even if you don't want to get an alliance with Dunland, you can get an alliance with Breland, you can get an alliance with the Northern Dunedain, and Breland will definitely help you out with the Dunlandings should they choose to attack you. So yeah, that's the middlemen factions covered. We're kind of flying through this, unlike the design ranking. Let's go to the last men faction. Men. Or, we have 2 more men factions. We'll go with Numenor, starting with the Ardunaim. It all depends on where you settle, obviously. But I had to do it. S tier. They're my favorite faction. And they are powerful because you can choose how you want to play the game. It's something that a lot of factions are robbed of with like predestined alliances. You have none of that. Obviously, you can choose a harder thing like the Tharbad start. Probably the hardest start in the game. I mean, maybe the Fornos start might be a little harder. Or going to some random part of like Dorwinian or Ravanian. That could be a hard start. But maybe the Osgiliath start's pretty hard too. Pelagir. But yeah, Tharbad start difficult. But you go to Mithlond, you're going to absolutely wreck them. If you go to Umbar, you're just going to have the easiest campaign of your life. And if you go into Gondor, it's not, unless you go to Pelargir, you're not going to have too difficult of a campaign. If you go into Dol Amroth, you're going to have a breeze, because, I mean, Lord knows Dol Amroth sucks at defending their flanks. But yeah, they're overall a powerful faction because of the fact that you have a choice. And you could, in theory, just amass mercenary armies from your King's Purse, because you get consistent income, get about 2 full stacks off those mercenaries, and just lay waste to whatever poor faction you decide that needs to die. So yeah, that's why I think that they're that's why I think they're S tier powerful faction. I think Dol Amroth, not a hard campaign, but as a faction's power goes, they're B. No, they're A. They're super easy. They're a really fun starting nation. If you're new to the mod, I'd recommend starting as them. Or actually, if you're new to Medieval 2 and you just decided you wanted to play for Divide and Conquer, first of all, I commend you because you're a true nerd. Secondly, I'd recommend starting as Dol Amroth or starting as Rune. Maybe not Rune. That's a little more difficult if you're not familiar with the game. Yeah, starting as Dol Amroth or starting as Angmar, probably. Because they're just pretty straightforward. Conquer everything in one direction. You don't really have to worry about your flanks too much. I mean, the Ardunaim might give you a little trouble. But as long as you actually be smart with your navy, you can easily just destroy their navy within a few turns. And then they can't conquer you, so you're fine. Yeah, they're A tier, powerful faction, really good bodyguard, and they have good units for the price as well. They're not super expensive faction. Alright, 2 more men and Numenor factions, and we'll go with Gondor now. Gondor is an A tier because your starting position is just so strong. With the amount of troops that you have in the east, you can easily, with all the money that you have as well, smash into Mordor and get to Minas Morgul in about 10 turns? Like, take it in about 10 turns, I'd say. If you don't want to deal with the garrison script, it's obviously going to be longer. But I mean, you're able just to smash into Mordor. You could probably even get another full stack and send it up to the Moran, and then you'll be fine. But yeah, they have a powerful start. Granted, it is if you get unlucky in say one or two battles, and you get like maybe one, I guess, screw up or one unlucky draw in terms of where the army started to go, you can kind of get a little behind. But again, you can always bottleneck them at the river, and you'll consistently make money. So yeah, you're a powerful faction. Plus, in the west, you have a solid army that can take some rebel settlements. Again, increase that income, and yeah, they'll be just be able to. You're a powerful faction. You're not obviously the most powerful, which is the S tier, which so far is just these three. But you're a powerful faction. All right, the Men of Dunedain, the Dunedain. It's mainly because of the starting position and how weak it is. You have good units. They're just really expensive, really rare to come by. Plus, your culture is non-existent in the regions that you are fighting in. So, like, you can take Fornas, Lorraine, and Numinas, and you'll definitely be able to hold those settlements. Like, they have good, God, they have good, they have good amount of Dunedain culture, but unless you go into Cardalin, you're probably gonna get fucked for a little while, by the Goblins of Moria. Plus, Angmar always seems to come down way too early. I cannot believe this has not been fixed yet in version 5, but it's been this way since version 3, I think. When Angmar's just decided, no, we're going to go in now, and we're going to go in whenever the hell we want, instead of waiting a little bit, which would make this faction obviously a little easier, but also it'd make the game a little more balanced. This is me hounding on the design issues. No. Oh, no, I don't want to do that. But yeah, I'm so fucking sick of Angmar, man. I hate this fucking faction. But yeah, we're going to Orc factions now, or no, we have Men of the East left. No, I'm gonna do Orc, because we just talked about Angmar. They're S tier. They're too powerful. They're the top of S tier. I'm gonna actually organize them by organize them. They're the most powerful faction in S tier. And actually, let's move them up. Yep, most powerful faction in S tier. They're so easy. If you're gonna start playing the game, just play Angmar. It's not that hard. They're just broken. They're too cheap as well as a. When I say cheap, I mean your units are way too cheap for how good they are. And yeah, let's just move on. I fucking hate talking about that faction. Volguldur, C tier. When you play as them, obviously when you play against them, they get a huge auto expansion, which is a little bit of a design flaw in my opinion. Just because of what the settlements they get. But yeah, when you're playing as them, you have some powerful units in like some of the higher tiers, but also your trash is just the worst. I mean, it's on the level of Snaga, who we're gonna get to in a moment. But yeah, they're pretty bad. They're pretty alright, I guess. They're just a C tier kind of faction. They're not bad. They're not good though. Speaking of bad factions, Goblins of Moria just have shitty units. Besides the Uruk Overseers, they are a nice shaman unit. One of the few shaman units in the game. I do like them, and I like the Mountain Orc Hunters. But other than that, I mean, they're just not good. They're just overall kind of a mid. They have a bad roster, and you're fighting with no armor against guys that have longbows, and they're going to absolutely destroy you anytime you go into a Maladris. But you know, you can always choose to not do that and just go after the Dunedain. You'll be fine, because they still have longbows, but they're easier to kill because there's fewer of them. All right, Gundabad, S tier. You can betray everyone, and you should betray everyone, and you're really safe. Just get an alliance with Angmar and break that stuff. Break that shit immediately, or break that shit as soon as you've like kind of handled the dwarves. I don't want to say gotten rid of them yet, because it's hard to kill the dwarves. Just because getting to Kirit Cathal and getting to like Skarn and all those eastern regions, it's hard to do. But it's easy to subdue them and get to Erebor. Plus, taking Azgaroth's not that hard, and overall subduing the Woodland Realm also pretty easy. Because you can kill the Woodland Realm at least. But yeah, I played a campaign, like a full, I don't know, it was like 80 turns in, maybe, and I had like 30 settlements by that point, which in Divide and Conquer, with how big the map is, it's pretty decent. It's not that difficult of a campaign. Or was I on 30? No, I was on 37 was a turn 50. That was what it was. Yeah. So they're a fun faction, but they're very powerful. Stab Angmar in the back eventually, and you'll be fine. All right. Isengard next. S tier, best orc faction in terms of quality. Super great armor, super fantastic units, especially since who you're fighting just the epitome of dogshit infantry, and you're fighting cavalry when you were an anti-cavalry faction. Now, of course, as the player, Rohan is hard to deal, or is OP. But as the AI, they're really bad. I mean, if we're doing this AI only, then Rohan would be there, because they legitimately always die. But we're not doing AI only, so they're going to be higher. And actually, let's organize this a little bit. I put them... They're going to be the bottom of S tier, just because I don't... This is mostly this is not fully my opinion. A lot of other people have the take that they're this high. I'm going to respect that. I'd still put them in A tier. So the online take is kind of boosting Bree a little bit, but also they are a genuinely powerful faction, but they are going to be the lowest because I don't have as much respect for them as I do for these 5. All right. Mordor, the last orc faction, is A tier. Solid faction. You're very safe. Your units are obviously a mixed batch. You don't have a ton of powerful units, but also you can get them pretty easily. And once you get all the Nazgul, it's just game over. So yeah, they're the same tier as Gondor, because either time you're gonna have somewhat difficulty, or somewhat of a difficult time with Gondor, and Gondor's gonna have a somewhat difficult time with you. When you play as Gondor, you're gonna have a somewhat difficult time with Mordor. But overall, both powerful factions. Both are not super difficult, and they're both powerful factions. Is the overall I guess takeaway. Let's do Men of the East now, and we'll get the truly mythical races out the way, like the dwarves and the elves. Harad is a C tier faction, just because you're like, I'll rate them all right now. Rune is powerful. Khand is less powerful because of the decision, which is difficult. Like, either you're gonna get fucked by Sauron, or you're gonna get fucked by the Blue Wizards. Either way, you're gonna lose your capital. And Rune is the most powerful because you have the least amount of obstacles, and you're in the easiest start position, in my opinion, because Dorwinian's pretty non-hostile and pretty passive overall in terms of their expansion, even westward. And the dwarves are going to be focusing on Gundabad, so you just have free reign to get all your clans united, and then just absolutely destroy Dorwinian, and then move up towards the dwarves. It's not a terribly difficult campaign. You're a very powerful faction, and your units are awesome. They're one of my favorite one of my more favorite factions. Khand, like I said, the decision kind of screws you, but other than that, you're a pretty powerful faction because you're a horse-based faction. Again, cavalry is king. I've wiped out entire stacks with just some marauders, which are their basic trash, and some slightly better lancers and horse archers. And like it's not super difficult. Harad, most difficult, or the most difficult, the least powerful when you're playing as them, just because your starting position is so horrible, and you don't start allied to the Ardenheim. It's really hard to get an alliance with them. For some reason, like coders, please change this now, because it just makes it unnecessarily hard and aids. And you're probably never going to get the Mumakil or the Hashari. The Hashari are like, you need like 20 plus settlements, I think. Which is just like, oh my god, bro. So, Harad is if they did Rune wrong, basically. And it used to be such a cooler faction. I wish they'd go back and... Like, you can... I wish they'd go back and make Harad the old way, but keep Rune the way it is. Because I think Rune, it adds, like, depth. This just feels fucking useless. This is just dumb. This is good. But yeah, moving on to less hated factions by myself. Erebor is, as a powerful faction, they're a B tier. Just because their units are super expensive. But the other two are gonna go in A tier because of the position you start in. You start in as Air Lewin, actually. I feel like Air Lewin might deserve S. No, they don't deserve S. And actually, assuming you fight the Bounton, you're never gonna lose as the Dwarven factions is the thing. You're never gonna like be conquered. Like you might legitimately be conquered as the Anduin, or you probably will. I mean, they really need to rework this faction now. You might be conquered as Dorwinian. You might be conquered as. You're not gonna be. You might be conquered as either of these two. You're never gonna be conquered as any of the Dwarven factions. You're probably never gonna be conquered as any of these guys either. As long as you play Khand right, which you should. And of course, you should be able to hold on to as the Dunedain. You might get fucked around with a little bit, but you know, eventually you get Gandalf, so whatever. But yeah, as the dwarves, you're never gonna be conquered. Ered Luin is just so powerful. And Khazad-dûm, you have the power that you have a whole stack right off the go that you're not paying anything for, so you're gonna have a bunch of money once you get to Moria, and then you're just gonna be fighting trash after trash after trash, trying to eliminate the goblins, which isn't too difficult to do. You can do that by like, I can't remember how many turns it is to get to Moria, but you can eliminate the goblins within like 20 turns, and they'll have Goblin Town at that point as well, which means like you're really beating, you're really going to be able to beat them down just because they're not a terribly strong faction. All right. Goodness me. The Elven factions. High Elves are S tier. Woodland Realm is B tier. Lothlorien is B tier. Both of them are. Let's actually put the High Elves above. High Elves are super strong, and they have a safe base. I mean, obviously, your next Imladris is next to all the Goblin units, but you can take Zadkala not too slow, or pretty fast. And you can take Goblin Town pretty easily after that. And plus the western side, also not too difficult because you can just take Buzzardroom pretty quickly, pretty soon. And as long as the dwarves turn on you, I mean, if the dwarves turn on you and you're an Eriador, just move them all down to S tier, or F tier. But if they don't, let's assume they don't, you're gonna have a breeze of a campaign. And even if they do, you know what I mean? I'm gonna quote Chappelle. If you did, you know what I mean? It's not that difficult. As the elves, you can manage it a lot better than the Dunedain can, even on their western flank. You can manage it a lot better than Bree can. Because you're also pretty close. So if they start being, you know, traitorous, just kill them. But the other two are down here because you're fighting a more difficult enemy. Dol Guldur, or I guess I shouldn't say that. You're fighting an enemy that has more men. Like the Goblins of Moria seem to not get the benefits that Dol Guldur does with the first of all the auto expansion. I mean, they get Goblin Town, but also they're so much farther away, whereas Dol Guldur expands like a bacteria. Whereas the Goblins of Moria kind of grow like a worm. So Dol Guldur, you have to go through settlements to get to their heartland, whereas the Goblins of Moria, you can just kind of waltz on in, and they're spread a lot more thin than Dol Guldur is. But yeah, it's a little more difficult, and plus, especially as the Woodland Realm, you have to deal with Gundabad. And Gundabad is a very powerful faction. So actually, I'm gonna move. You have to deal with Isengard those, but you have to deal with them later. I'm gonna move the Woodland Realm down to C tier. I don't think they're a poorly designed faction. I actually think they're a good faction. But the issue is you don't know when Gundabad's coming for you. You might think about like 20 turns in, they'll probably be going after your first settlement, if that. But you're a lot more safe as Lothlorien. So yeah, this is the faction tier list. This time we are only 30 minutes instead of 50. I'm gonna make sure I order the A tier actually. Let's order all the tiers. So the end of this part would be the worst. The worst. No, this is definitely correct. Definitely the top of A tier has to be Woodland Realm, Rat has to be the bottom, or top of C tier has to be Woodland Realm. They're borderline B tier. I just put them down here because I feel like they're almost on the level with Dol Guldur. Dol Guldur AI, though, would be all the way up here. But yeah, they're right there. Dunland. I'm debating moving the Dunedain down to C tier. I'm also debating moving Enerdwaith down to B tier. But it'd be the top of B tier. Yeah, no, I'm gonna put them at the top of B tier and put Dunland at the bottom. Move them down to C tier. But they would be the new... No, they're on the same tier. And I think the Woodland Realm's slightly more powerful. I'm just doing this to even it out a little more. I think it was a little too top heavy. I'm a little more of an optimist in terms of these factions, at least. Or in terms of this game. Yeah, S tier, looking good. 8 tier. Let's put Rune at the top. Let's put Ered Luin next. Khazad Doom definitely deserves to be at the bottom. Mordor is definitely worse than Gondor, but I put the Lamroth worse than both of them. It's not a hard campaign, they're just weaker. But I'd put Dale right before Khazad Doom. Just because of the strength of your enemies compared to Khazad Doom. And goodness me, I think this looks pretty good now. Variag's that high. Yeah, I'd put with the only issue being that you just don't have enough money to buy new troops all the time. I'd say that like Erebor definitely has to be up here. But Enerdwaith is definitely more powerful. Because also you're fighting... Erebor is fighting with few javelin men against an unarmored foe, whereas you're fighting with... as Enerdwaith, or Erebor is fighting, yeah, no javelin men against an unarmored foe. You have a bunch of javelin men as Enerdwaith, and you're fighting against an unarmored foe as well. So you're probably going to do better. No. Dunland's definitely a little more powerful when you control them. No, Lothlorien is. Alright, I think this is now looking like a pretty good tier list. This is all based off power. Again, that's why the Anduin is just a heaping pile of dog shit. They really need a rework. Because I think in this current game state, I would almost consider them just not worth it to play. But only based off like a metric of fun. Because being powerful all the time is not fun. This is obviously not a fun tier list. Being powerful all the time isn't fun. Being weak all the time isn't fun. It's all these, I think, these nations from here all the way down to here, actually. So not the most powerful and not the least powerful are the most fun to play. I think I've had fun on every single one of these nations. I've never had fun as the Anduin because I want to rip my hair out. I've never had fun as Angmar because it's just boring. You are never going to lose as Angmar. You're never threatened as Angmar. You're threatened for like the first 20 turns as Gundabad. Maybe not again, but there are setbacks at least to your goals. There's never a setback as Angmar. I'm so fucking sick of this faction. Both of these need reworks right now. And they need to be nerfed, and they need to be buffed. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this video. This is definitely, I'd say, a pretty good tier list. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to like and subscribe. Share it if you want. And I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.